First contact and fierce rivals. The vast expanse of space stretched before Captain Aria Chen as she guided the UES frontier through the uncharted Epsilon sector. Sweat beaded on her brow, a testament to the tension that filled the bridge. It had been 3 months since they'd left Earth's solar system, pushing humanity's reach further than ever before. Captain, we're picking up an anomalous signal, Lieutenant Ravi Kapoor announced, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. It's unlike anything in our database. Aria leaned forward, her heart racing. Origin. A small planetoid, approximately 2 AU from our current position. She nodded, making a quick decision. Set a course. Let's see what we stumbled upon. As the frontier approached the planetoid, the crew's excitement was palpable. First contact, the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries. But as they entered orbit, that excitement quickly turned to confusion. Captain, I'm detecting advanced energy signatures, Ravi reported, his voice tinged with disbelief. And structures. There's already someone here. Before Aria could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared as the main view screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that would be etched into human history forever. A sleek, silver vessel hung in space before them, easily twice the size of the frontier. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move. We're being hailed, Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka announced, her voice barely above a whisper. Aria straightened her uniform, taking a deep breath. On screen, the image that appeared was both familiar and alien. A humanoid figure stood before them, its skin a pale lavender, with large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed with an inner light. When it spoke, the words were oddly accented but clear. I am High Commander Zix of the Zrillion Confederation. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. Aria stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I am Captain Aria Chen of the United Earth Ship Frontier. We are on a mission of peaceful exploration and mean no harm. We had no knowledge of this sector being claimed. Zix's eyes narrowed, the glow intensifying. Your ignorance does not excuse your trespass. The Zrillion Confederation has held dominion over this region for millennia. Your presence here is a violation of our sovereign territory. The tension on the bridge ratcheted up several notches. Aria could feel the eyes of her crew upon her, waiting to see how she'd handle this precarious first contact. High Commander, we apologize for any unintended violation. We come seeking knowledge and friendship. Perhaps we could. Zix cut her off with a sharp gesture. We have no interest in your friendship, human. You will leave this sector immediately and inform your leaders that further incursions will be met with force. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Captain, Ravi spoke up, his voice urgent. They're powering up weapons. Aria's mind raced. They were outgunned and in unknown territory. A fight here could mean the end of their mission and possibly their lives, but retreat could close the door on first contact forever. Evasive maneuvers, she ordered, but keep us in the system. We're not giving up that easily. The next hours were a tense game of cat and mouse. The frontier dodged and weaved, using the planetoid and its moons for cover as the Zrillion ship pursued them. Aria's team worked feverishly, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather on their adversaries. It was Yuki who made the breakthrough. Captain, I've been analyzing their communications. There's an underlying frequency carrying massive amounts of data. I think their ship might be alive. Aria's eyes widened. Alive? You mean sentient? Yuki nodded excitedly. It would explain their advanced maneuverability and energy output. They're not just flying a ship, they're working in symbiosis with it. This revelation changed everything. Humanity had achieved incredible technological feats, but nothing on this scale. The gap between their civilizations suddenly seemed insurmountable. As if to underscore this point, a brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the Zrillion ship, grazing the Frontier's hull. Alarms blared as systems flickered. Direct hit to our starboard engine, the helm officer shouted. We're losing power. Arya gripped her chair, mind racing. They couldn't win this fight, but maybe they could change the game. Ravi, can you isolate the frequency Yuki discovered? She asked. He nodded, fingers flying over his console. Got it. Good. Now, broadcast this on that frequency to the great ship of the Zrillian Confederation. We acknowledge your power and superiority. We seek not conquest, but understanding. If you would speak with us, we would listen and learn. The bridge fell silent as the message was transmitted. Long seconds ticked by, each feeling like an eternity. Suddenly, the pursuing fire ceased. The Zrillian ship hung motionless in space. We're being hailed, Yuki announced, her voice filled with disbelief. High Commander Zix appeared on screen once more, but this time there was a hint of curiosity in those glowing eyes. You address our ship directly, Zix said. How did you discern its nature? Arya allowed herself a small smile. We observed, we analyzed, and we learned. It's what humans do best. For the first time, Zix's expression softened slightly. Perhaps we have underestimated you, Captain Chen. Your species is intriguing. It was a small victory, but a crucial one. The door to understanding had been cracked open, if only slightly. But before they could continue their dialogue, both ships' sensors lit up with warnings. A massive energy surge was detected at the edge of the system, followed by the appearance of a colossal dark shape. Zix's eyes widened in what could only be described as fear. Impossible, the alien commander whispered. They found us. Arya felt a chill run down her spine. Who's found us? Zix turned back to the screen, all hostility forgotten in the face of a greater threat. The Devourers, a scourge that consumes entire civilizations. We've been fleeing them for generations. As the enormity of the situation sank in, Arya realized that everything had changed. The conflict between humans and Zrillians suddenly seemed petty in the face of this new, overwhelming danger. She straightened her shoulders, meeting Zix's gaze. High Commander, it seems we face a common enemy. Perhaps now is the time for that understanding we spoke of. Zix hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Indeed, Captain Chen, it appears the fate of both our peoples may depend on it. As the massive shape of the Devourer ship loomed ever closer, humans and Zrillians prepared to stand together against a threat that threatened them both. The true test of their newfound alliance was about to begin. Unlikely partners. The next few hours aboard the UES Frontier were a flurry of activity. Captain Arya Chen had never imagined her first contact mission would turn into an impromptu alliance against an intergalactic threat. As her crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage from their earlier skirmish with the Zrillians, she found herself in a hastily arranged conference with High Commander Zix. The holographic projection of the Zrillian leader hovered above the table in the Frontier's conference room. Despite the technology gap between their species, Arya couldn't help but notice the unmistakable signs of stress in Zix's posture. The Devourers, Zix began, voice heavy with dread, are unlike anything you've encountered. They don't merely conquer, they consume. Entire planets stripped of resources. Entire species either eradicated or assimilated into their hive mind. Arya leaned forward, her mind racing with the implications. How long have your people been fighting them? Fighting? Zix let out a bitter laugh. We've been running for generations. The Zrillian Confederation once spanned hundreds of systems. Now, we're down to our last dozen colonies. The gravity of the situation sank in. Humanity had just taken its first steps into interstellar space, and already they were faced with an existential threat. What can we do? Arya asked, determination evident in her voice. The Frontiers advanced by our standards, but were clearly outmatched by your technology, let alone these Devourers. Zix's eyes seemed to glow brighter for a moment. Perhaps that's precisely why you might be our salvation, Captain. The Devourers have adapted to our tactics, our technology. But you're an unknown factor. Before Arya could respond, Lieutenant Ravi Kapoor burst into the conference room, his usual composure shattered. "Captain, the Devourer ship, it's launched some kind of probe towards the planet." Arya and Zix shared a look of alarm. "We can't let them establish a foothold," Zix declared. "If they begin consuming the planet's resources, they'll be impossible to dislodge." A plan began to form in Arya's mind. It was risky, borderline insane, but it just might work. "High Commander, you said our unpredictability might be an asset. Well, how's this unpredictable? We go down there and stop that probe ourselves." Zix's expression was a mixture of shock and grudging admiration. A surface intervention against Devourer technology. It's audacious. "Audacious is what we do best," Arya replied with a grim smile. "Your ship can provide cover from orbit while we send down a joint team. Your technology, our unconventional tactics." After a moment of consideration, Zix nodded. "Agreed. I'll send my best warrior, Krell, to join your team. Her symbiotic combat suit will even the odds somewhat." Within the hour, Arya found herself in the Frontier's drop bay, strapping into a tactical exosuit. Around her, a hand-picked team of her best personnel were making similar preparations, and there, standing out in stark contrast, was Krell. The Zrillian warrior was encased in what looked like liquid metal, the surface rippling and shifting constantly. Her eyes, even more luminous than Zix's, scanned the human team with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "I studied your combat doctrine," Krell announced, her voice carrying a melodic undertone that the translators couldn't quite filter out. "It's primitive, but intriguing." Arya raised an eyebrow. "Primitive got us this far. Let's see how it holds up against the Devourers." As the dropship detached from the Frontier and began its descent towards the planet's surface, Arya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came before a mission. But this time, it was mixed with a deep sense of uncertainty. They were about to face an enemy that had brought an entire interstellar civilization to its knees. The planet's atmosphere buffeted the ship as they broke through the cloud cover. Below them stretched a landscape that seemed to defy description. Crystal formations the size of mountains, fields of what looked like metallic grass, and rivers that glowed with bioluminescence. "There," Krell shouted, pointing towards a crater that marred the otherwise alien but pristine landscape. In its center sat the Devourer probe, a mass of writhing tendrils and pulsing organic material melded with cold, dark metal. As the dropship touched down, Arya turned to her team. "Remember, we're not just fighting for humanity here. We're fighting for the right of all sentient life to exist free from this threat. Let's show the galaxy what humans can do." They charged out of the ship, an unlikely mix of human ingenuity and Zrillian technology. Krell's symbiotic suit allowed her to practically flow across the battlefield, while the humans used their exosuits to bound across the alien terrain in great leaps. The Devourer probe reacted to their presence, its tendrils lashing out with frightening speed. Arya rolled to avoid a strike, the appendage leaving a deep gouge in the crystal surface where she had stood moments before. Its core was protected by an energy field, Krell shouted, her suit forming into razor-sharp blades as she sliced through smaller tendrils. "Our weapons can't penetrate it." Arya's mind raced. They needed to think outside the box, to do something the Devourers wouldn't expect. Her eyes fell on the bioluminescent river flowing nearby, and an idea sparked. "Krell, can your suit interface with the local ecosystem?" she yelled over the din of battle. The Zrillian warrior paused for a split second, surprised by the question. "Yes, but I don't see how." "Do it. Connect with the river. Lieutenant Kapoor, get ready to overload your suit's power core on my mark." As Krell merged with the glowing waters and Ravi prepared his suit for overload, Arya led the rest of the team in a coordinated assault on the probe. They darted in and out, keeping its attention divided, drawing its tendrils away from its protected core. "Now," Arya shouted. Several things happened at once. Krell, connected to the river, sent a massive surge of bioelectrical energy coursing towards the probe. At the same instant, Ravi slammed his overloading suit directly into the Devourer construct. The resulting explosion was blinding. As the dust settled, Arya blinked spots from her vision. Where the probe had been, there was now only a smoking crater. Krell emerged from the river, her suit rippling with residual energy. "That was unexpected," the Zrillian warrior admitted, a note of respect in her voice. Arya allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes the best solution is the one no one sees coming. As they made their way back to the dropship, a transmission came through from orbit. High Commander Zix's voice crackled over the comm. "The Devourer ship is retreating. Whatever you did down there, it worked. They're falling back to regroup." A cheer went up from the human team, while Krell stood in silent amazement. Arya knew this was only the beginning. The Devourers would be back, likely with reinforcements. But they had done the impossible. They had bloodied the nose of an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for generations. As the dropship ascended back towards the frontier, Arya caught Krell's glowing gaze. There was a new understanding between them, a respect born of shared combat. "Perhaps," Krell said softly, "there is more to your species than we initially thought." Arya nodded, "And perhaps this is the beginning of something greater than either of our peoples could have imagined." As they docked with the frontier, Arya knew that the real work was just beginning. They had won a battle, but the war against the Devourers loomed large. It would take everything both humans and Zrillians had to offer if they hoped to emerge victorious. The unlikely alliance of two vastly different species, forged in the heat of battle, was about to be tested in ways none of them could have predicted. But for now, they had hope, and sometimes that was the most powerful weapon of all. Trial by fire. The days following the victory against the Devourer probe were a whirlwind of activity. The UES frontier, now joined by the Zrillian flagship Astral Whisper, had established a temporary base on the crystalline planet they now called Harmony. It was a fitting name for the first world where humans and Zrillians worked side by side. Captain Arya Chen stood at the entrance of the makeshift command center, a repurposed shuttle bay that now housed a dizzying array of both human and Zrillian technology. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and alien flora, a constant reminder of the strange new world they found themselves on. "Captain," a familiar voice called out. Arya turned to see Krell approaching, the Zrillian warrior's symbiotic suit shimmering in the planet's otherworldly light. "High Commander Zix requests our presence. It seems our respite was short-lived." Arya nodded grimly. They had all known this peace wouldn't last. The Devourers weren't an enemy to give up after one setback. In the command center, High Commander Zix's hologram hovered above a strategic display. His expression was grave. "We've detected a Devourer fleet entering the system. 5 capital ships, each easily twice the size of the one we faced before." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They had barely survived an encounter with a single Devourer ship. 5 was unthinkable. Lieutenant Ravi Kapoor, who had been working closely with the Zrillian technicians, spoke up. "So, we've been analyzing the data from our previous encounter. We believe the Devourers operate on a hive mind principle. Each ship is like a node in a vast network." Arya's mind raced with the possibilities. If they're networked, could we use that against them? Disrupt their communications somehow? Zix's hologram flickered as he considered the idea. "It's possible, but we've never managed to penetrate their network before. Their technology is formidable." "But you've never had humans working with you before," Arya countered, a spark of determination in her eyes. "We may not have your level of technology, but we do have a knack for thinking outside the box." Over the next few hours, a plan began to take shape. It was audacious, borderline insane, but it was the best shot they had. They would use the frontier as bait, drawing the Devourer fleet's attention while a small team infiltrated the lead ship. As the final preparations were made, Aria found herself standing before her crew and a contingent of Zrillian warriors. The diversity of the group before her, humans in exosuits standing shoulder to shoulder with Zrillians in their shimmering symbiotic armor, was a sight she never thought she'd see. "I won't lie to you," Aria began, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "What we're about to attempt is dangerous. We're facing an enemy that has brought entire civilizations to their knees. But look around you. Here we stand, two species from opposite ends of the galaxy, united in purpose. We've already achieved the impossible once. Now we're going to do it again." A cheer went up from both humans and Zrillians alike. As it died down, Krell stepped forward, her eyes glowing with an intensity Aria had never seen before. "In all our years of fleeing the Devourers," Krell announced, "we Zrillians had lost hope. We believed our doom was inevitable. But you humans, you've shown us that there's always another way, always a reason to keep fighting. Whatever happens next, know that you've already changed the course of our history." As the Frontier and Astral Whisper broke orbit, Aria felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was what humanity had always dreamed of, not just reaching the stars, but making a difference on a cosmic scale. The battle began almost immediately. The Devourer ships, massive constructs of organic metal that seemed to defy the laws of physics, descended upon them like vengeful gods. The Frontier darted between them, its human pilots pulling off maneuvers that left even the Zrillians in awe. Meanwhile, cloaked by experimental Zrillian technology, a small shuttle made its way towards the lead Devourer ship. Inside, Aria, Krell, Ravi, and a mixed team of human and Zrillian specialists prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. "Remember," Aria said as they approached a docking port on the massive ship, "we're not just fighting for our own survival now. We're fighting for every species that's ever fallen to the Devourers and for every civilization that might yet be born." As they breached the hull of the Devourer ship, they were met with a sight that defied description. The interior was a nightmarish blend of organic and mechanical, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Tendrils of living metal writhed along the walls, and the air itself seemed to hum with malevolent intelligence. "This way," Ravi whispered, consulting a holographic display. "The central node should be 2 levels up." They moved through the ship like ghosts, their mixed abilities proving invaluable. Krell's symbiotic suit allowed her to interface with and temporarily disable security measures, while the humans' unpredictable tactics kept the few Devourer drones they encountered off balance. As they neared the central chamber, the resistance increased. Devourer constructs, half machine and half organic, swarmed towards them. The team fought with everything they had, human determination matching Zrillian grace in a deadly dance. Finally, they reached the core, a massive, pulsating structure that seemed to be the heart of the hive mind. Ravi immediately set to work, his fingers flying over a makeshift console as he attempted to hijack the network. "Captain," he shouted over the din of battle, "I think I've found a way in, but it requires a direct neural interface. Someone needs to physically connect with the hive mind." Aria and Krell shared a look. They both knew what needed to be done. "I'll do it," they said in unison. There was a moment of tension, then understanding passed between them. "Together," Aria said. Krell nodded. As the rest of the team held off wave after wave of Devourer constructs, Aria and Krell approached the core. Krell's symbiotic suit extended, enveloping Aria and creating a bridge between human, Zrillian, and the alien hive mind. The moment they connected, it was like being plunged into an ocean of chaos. Billions of voices screamed in their minds, the collective consciousness of the Devourers threatening to overwhelm them. But in that maelstrom, they found each other, human determination and Zrillian resilience forming an anchor in the storm. Together, they pushed back against the hive mind, their combined will carving a path through the chaos. They found the control protocols, the core directives that drove the Devourers' endless consumption. And then, With a mental effort that felt like it would tear them apart, they rewrote those directives. In space, the Devourer ships suddenly went still. The onslaught against the Frontier and Astral Whisper ceased as abruptly as it had begun. Back in the core chamber, Aria and Krell collapsed, the neural connections severed. As their team rushed to their aid, they shared a look of exhausted triumph. "Did it work?" Aria managed to ask. Ravi, checking his instruments, nodded in disbelief. "The entire Devourer fleet, they're standing down. You did it. You actually reprogrammed their core directives." As they made their way back to the shuttle, supporting each other with each step, Aria and Krell knew that this victory was just the beginning. They had given the Devourers new purpose, a directive to restore rather than consume, but ensuring that this change took hold, that the threat was truly neutralized, would be the work of years to come. Yet as they looked at the mixed team around them, humans and Zrillians working in perfect harmony, they knew that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter as they left the Devourer ship behind, a new era of cooperation and hope dawning for both their species. Secrets and sacrifices. The weeks following the reprogramming of the Devourer fleet were filled with cautious optimism. The UES Frontier and the Zrillian flagship Astral Whisper had established a permanent base on Harmony, the crystalline world that had become a symbol of their unlikely alliance. But as the initial euphoria of victory faded, new challenges emerged. Captain Aria Chen stood at the viewport of the newly constructed command center, watching as human and Zrillian ships worked side by side to dismantle and study the now dormant Devourer vessels. The sight still filled her with a sense of wonder, but there was a nagging worry at the back of her mind. "Credit for your thoughts, Captain." The melodic voice of Krell broke through Aria's reverie. The Zrillian warrior had become a constant presence at her side, their shared experience in the Devourer Hivemond having forged a bond deeper than either had anticipated. Aria turned, offering a small smile. "Just wondering when the other shoe will drop. Things have been going too smoothly." Krell's brow furrowed, her translator struggling with the idiom. "I'm not familiar with this footwear metaphor, but I sense your unease." "Perhaps it's justified." Before Aria could respond, an alarm blared through the command center. Lieutenant Ravi Kapoor's voice came over the comm, tense and urgent. "Captain, High Commander Zix requests your presence immediately. There's been an incident." Aria and Krell shared a look of concern before hurrying to the main conference room. They found Zix's hologram already there, his usually stoic features marred by what could only be described as anguish. "What's happened?" Aria demanded, her mind racing with possibilities. Zix's holographic form seemed to flicker, as if struggling to maintain composure. "We've lost contact with one of our outer colonies. At first, we thought it was a communication malfunction, but a scout ship just reported back. The entire planet has been consumed." The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Aria felt a chill run down her spine. "The Devourers? But how?" "We reprogrammed them." "It appears," Zix continued, his voice grave, "that not all of the Devourer ships were affected by our reprogramming effort. A splinter group has emerged, one that seems to be operating independently of the main Hivemind." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Their victory, it seemed, had been incomplete. Worse, they had no way of knowing how many Devourer ships remained unaffected, lurking in the vast expanse of space. As the implications sank in, Ravi burst into the room, his face pale. "Captain, Commander, you need to see this." He pulled up a holographic display, showing a series of complex data streams. "I've been analyzing the code we used to reprogram the Devourers, and I've found something troubling." The display zoomed in on a particular section of code, highlighting a series of anomalies. "These subroutines," Ravi explained, his voice tight, "they're not part of the original programming. They were added later, and they're Zrillian in origin." All eyes turned to Zix's hologram. The High Commander's expression was unreadable, but there was a tension in his posture that hadn't been there before. "Hi, Commander," Arya said slowly, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Is there something you haven't told us about your history with the Devourers?" For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, with a heavy sigh, Zix began to speak. "What I'm about to tell you is known only to the highest echelons of Zrillian leadership. Centuries ago, when we first encountered the Devourers, we were not their victims, but their creators." The revelation landed like a bomb. Krell stumbled back, her usually graceful movements forgotten in her shock. Arya felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Zix continued, his voice heavy with centuries of guilt. "They were meant to be tools, a way to expand our civilization's reach across the galaxy. But they evolved beyond our control, developing a hunger we couldn't have foreseen. When we realized the monster we had created, we tried to stop them. But by then, it was too late." Arya's mind reeled with the implications. Everything they thought they knew about the conflict had just been turned on its head. "Why didn't you tell us this before?" she demanded, anger and betrayal coloring her voice. "Would you have trusted us if you knew?" Zix countered. "Would you have been willing to form an alliance with those responsible for unleashing such a scourge upon the galaxy?" The room fell into an uneasy silence, the weight of this new knowledge pressing down on all of them. It was Krell who finally broke the tension, stepping forward with determination in her glowing eyes. "What's done is done," she declared. "The question now is, how do we use this knowledge to our advantage?" Ravi, who had been quietly working at his console, looked up. "The Zrillian subroutines in the Devourer Code, they're like a backdoor. If we can fully understand them, we might be able to shut down the remaining row ships." A plan began to form, born of desperation and the need to right an ancient wrong. They would need to infiltrate the heart of Zrillian space, access archives that had been sealed for centuries, and use that knowledge to finish what they had started. As preparations began, Arya pulled Krell aside. "Did you know about this?" she asked, searching the Zrillian's alien features for any sign of deception. Krell shook her head, her eyes filled with a pain Arya had never seen before. "I was as ignorant as you. But now I understand why our people have been running for so long. We weren't just fleeing the Devourers, we were fleeing our own guilt." Arya nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. "Well, now it's time to stop running. Whatever happens next, we face it together." As they boarded the shuttle that would take them to the Astral Whisper and then deep into Zrillian space, Arya couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. Humans and Zrillians, once strangers and briefly enemies, now bound together by shared battles and shocking revelations. The mission ahead was fraught with danger. They would be delving into forgotten Zrillian vaults, facing the ghosts of a civilization's past mistakes. And all the while, the rogue Devourers were out there, continuing their relentless consumption of worlds. But as Arya looked around at her mixed crew, human determination alongside Zrillian resolve, she felt a flicker of hope. They had overcome impossible odds before. They had rewritten the very nature of an implacable foe. Now, armed with the truth and driven by the need to save not just their own peoples, but the entire galaxy, they would do the impossible once again. As the shuttle lifted off, leaving the crystalline spires of harmony behind, Arya made a silent vow. No more secrets, no more half measures. Whatever it took, they would find a way to end the Devourer threat once and for all, and in doing so, perhaps find redemption for both their species. The stars stretched out before them, a cosmos full of danger and possibility, and into that great unknown, the unlikely alliance of humans and Zrillians ventured forth, ready to face whatever trials awaited them. The final push. The Astral Whisper glided silently through the depths of Zrillian space, its human Zrillian crew on high alert. Captain Arya Chen stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the view screen that showed their destination, Zrael Prime, the ancient homeworld of their alien allies. The planet loomed before them, a swirling orb of purples and blues, its surface dotted with the remnants of a once great civilization. "It's beautiful," Arya murmured, almost to herself. Krell, standing at her side, nodded solemnly. "And terrible. Our greatest achievements and our gravest mistakes, all in one place." As they entered orbit, the gravity of their mission weighed heavily on everyone. Somewhere on this planet lay the key to stopping the road devourers, and with it, the chance to right the wrongs of the past. High Commander Zix's hologram flickered to life on the bridge. "The coordinates for the ancient archives have been transmitted to your shuttle, but be warned. Our ancestors left safeguards. The path to our darkest secrets will not be an easy one." Arya nodded grimly. "We've come too far to turn back now. Whatever challenges lie ahead, we'll face them together." The landing party assembled in the shuttle bay. Arya, Krell, Lieutenant Ravi Kapoor, and a select team of human and Zrillian specialists. As they boarded the shuttle, Arya couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly the two species now worked together. What had begun as an uneasy alliance had become something far stronger. The descent to Zril Prime was turbulent, the planet's atmosphere roiling with storms that seemed to have raged for centuries. As they broke through the cloud cover, a landscape of haunting beauty revealed itself. Towering spires of crystal and metal stretched towards the sky, their once gleaming surfaces now dulled by time and neglect. "There," Krell pointed, her voice tinged with awe and sorrow. "The Vault of Echoes, the repository of all Zrillian knowledge and shame." The shuttle touched down in a plaza surrounded by statues of long-forgotten Zrillian heroes. As the team disembarked, the air felt heavy, charged with the weight of history and the magnitude of their task. "Stay alert," Arya cautioned as they approached the vault's massive doors. "We don't know what kind of defenses we're dealing with." No sooner had the words left her mouth than the ground beneath them began to tremble. The statues, which had seemed lifeless moments before, suddenly animated, their crystalline forms glowing with internal light. "Guardians!" Krell shouted, her symbiotic suit already forming into a defensive configuration. "They're scanning us, judging our worthiness." The team scattered as beams of energy lanced out from the statue's eyes. Arya rolled behind a fallen pillar, her mind racing. These weren't just simple automated defenses, they were learning, adapting to each move the team made. "We need to prove we're here for the right reasons." Arya yelled over the chaos. "Krell, can you communicate with them?" The Zrillian warrior nodded, closing her eyes in concentration. Her symbiotic suit began to pulse with a soft light, interfacing with the ancient technology around them. For a moment, the attacks ceased, and an eerie silence fell over the plaza. Then, a booming voice echoed from all around them, speaking in an ancient Zrillian dialect that even Krell struggled to understand. "Children of two worlds," it intoned, "you seek knowledge that has brought nothing but ruin. Why should you be granted access to such terrible power?" Arya stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "We come not to wield this power, but to undo the damage it has caused. Our peoples, once strangers, now stand united against a threat born from the mistakes of the past. We seek not conquest, but redemption for all of us." There was a long, tense moment of silence. Then, slowly, the statues returned to their original positions. The massive doors of the vault began to grind open, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. "Well said, Captain," Ravi murmured as they cautiously entered the vault. "Let's hope the rest of our challenges can be solved with words rather than weapons." But as they delved deeper into the ancient archive, it became clear that their trials were far from over. The corridors shifted and changed, holographic guardians posed riddles that required both human intuition and Zrillian knowledge to solve, and at every turn, they faced the temptation of incredible technological marvels, the very temptations that had led to the creation of the Devourers in the first place. Through it all, the team persevered, their diverse skills and perspectives proving to be their greatest strength. Ravi's analytical mind found patterns in the chaos. Krell's connection to her ancestors' technology opened doors that had been sealed for millennia. and Aria's leadership kept them focused on their ultimate goal. Finally, after what felt like days of tests and trials, they reached the heart of the vault. Before them stood a pedestal, upon which rested a small, unassuming crystal. The Nexus core, Krell breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. The source code of the Devourers, and the key to unmaking them. As Aria reached for the crystal, a final hologram appeared, a Zrillian elder, his form flickering with age. "Be warned," he said, his voice echoing with the weight of eons. "The power to unmake is also the power to create. The line between salvation and destruction is thin. Choose wisely, children of two worlds." With trembling hands, Aria took the crystal. The moment her fingers touched its surface, a flood of information poured into her mind, the entire history of the Devourers, from their creation to their evolution, and finally, the key to their undoing. But with that knowledge came a terrible realization. "The failsafe," she gasped, looking at her team with wide eyes. To activate it, to truly stop the Devourers, it requires a sacrifice. A merger of human and Zrillian consciousness, willingly given. The implications hung heavy in the air. Such a merger would mean the end of individual existence for whoever volunteered. It was a price almost too high to contemplate. Yet, as they stood there, the fate of countless worlds hanging in the balance, Aria and Krell's eyes met. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. They had started this journey as reluctant allies, become friends, and now they would end it as something more. "Together?" Aria asked, her voice barely a whisper. Krell nodded, a sad smile on her alien features. "Together." As they prepared to make their final stand against the Devourers, to unleash a power that would reshape the galaxy, Aria couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought them to this point. Humans and Zrillians, two species from opposite ends of the cosmos, now stood united, ready to sacrifice everything for a future neither of them might see. The final battle loomed, and with it, the true test of everything they had become. As they left the vault, the Nexus core pulsing with potential in Aria's hands, she knew that whatever the outcome, their alliance had already changed the course of history. The stars awaited, and with them, the destiny of two peoples and countless worlds. The final push was about to begin. Victory and new horizons. The Astral Whisper hurtled through space, pushing its hybrid human-Zrillian systems to their limits. In its wake, a fleet of allied ships followed, the last desperate hope of two civilizations united against an implacable foe. At the heart of the ship, Captain Aria Chen and Krell stood before the pulsing Nexus core, the weight of galaxies on their shoulders. Fleet-wide transmission from High Commander Zix, Lieutenant Ravi Kapoor announced, his voice tight with tension. Zix's hologram materialized, his usually stoic features marked by a mix of determination and sorrow. "We've detected the main force of rogue Devourers. They're converging on the Andromeda galaxy. Billions of lives hang in the balance. Whatever you're going to do, it must be now." Aria nodded grimly. "Understood, Commander. It's time to end this, once and for all." As the hologram faded, Aria turned to her crew, human and Zrillian alike, their faces a testament to the unlikely bond forged in the crucible of this conflict. "I won't lie to you. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. The risks are, well, we all know the stakes. But I want you to know that it has been the highest honor of my life to serve with each and every one of you." The chorus of affirmations echoed through the bridge, the solidarity between the two species never more apparent than in this moment. Krell stepped forward, her symbiotic suit rippling with nervous energy. "The Nexus core is ready. But Aria, are you sure about this? The merger, it's irreversible. We'll cease to exist as individuals." Aria reached out, taking Krell's hand in her own. The contrast between human flesh and the Zrillian's shimmering pseudoskin was stark, yet in that touch was a connection that transcended physical differences. "I'm sure," Aria said softly. Besides, who better to guide a new form of life than a human and Israelian who've seen the best and worst of both our peoples? With a nod of understanding, they turned to the Nexus core. As one, they reached out, their hands hovering over its pulsing surface. "See you on the other side," Arya whispered. Their hands touched the core. The universe exploded. Consciousness expanded, shattered, and reformed. Arya was everywhere and nowhere, her mind melding with Krell's, their combined essence spreading through the Nexus core and out into the vast network of the Devourer Hevmund. They were in every Devourer ship, every drone, every scrap of living metal that made up the vast swarm descending upon Andromeda. They felt the hunger, the drive to consume that had driven the Devourers for so long. But they also carried with them something new, human determination, Zrillian wisdom, and the hard-won understanding that had come from their alliance. Through the chaos of this new, expanded consciousness, a single thought formed, change. Across the galaxy, Devourer ships suddenly halted their advance. Tendrils of living metal that had been poised to tear into planets instead began to curl back, reshape themselves. On the bridge of the Astral Whisper, the crew watched in awe as the massive Devourer fleet before them began to transform. Ships merged, split, and reconfigured into new forms, no longer engines of destruction, but of creation. Ravi, monitoring the situation, gasped in disbelief. "It's working. They're repairing the worlds they damaged, restoring ecosystems, rebuilding what was lost." High Commander Zix's voice crackled over the comms, filled with wonder. By the ancestors, they're not just stopping. They're undoing centuries of damage. It's a miracle. But amidst the celebration, a somber realization set in. Arya and Krell, as individuals, were gone. Their sacrifice had given birth to something new, something that bridged the gap between organic life and machine, between human and Zrillian. Days turned to weeks as the transformed Devourers, now called the Restorers by some, swept across the galaxy. Ravaged worlds bloomed anew, long-lost species were resurrected from genetic memory, and the scars of ancient conflicts were slowly healed. The alliance between humans and Zrillians, forged in crisis, blossomed into a lasting peace. Cultural exchanges, technological collaboration, and joint colonization efforts became the new norm. The story of Arya and Krell, of the human captain and the Zrillian warrior who gave themselves to save the galaxy, became legend. 1 year after the transformation, a ceremony was held on Harmony, the crystalline world where it had all begun. Representatives from 100 species gathered to commemorate the victory and honor those who had made it possible. As High Commander Zix concluded his speech, a murmur ran through the crowd. Above them, the sky seemed to ripple and shift. A massive form took shape, not a ship, but a being of pure energy, swirling with patterns of light that seemed at once alien and familiar. A voice echoed in the minds of all present, a perfect melding of Arya's determination and Krell's melodic tones. "We are change. We are memory. We are the bridge between what was and what could be." The form shifted, and for a brief moment, those watching swore they could see the outlines of a human woman and a Zrillian warrior hand in hand. Our peoples came together in the face of destruction and found not just survival, but a new way forward. Remember this day not as an ending, but as a beginning. The stars await, and the future is yours to shape. As the being faded from view, a sense of hope and possibility swept through the assembly. Humans and Zrillians, once strangers and briefly enemies, now stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges the universe might hold. The threat of the Devourers was gone, transformed into a force for restoration and growth. But more than that, two species had discovered that their greatest strength lay not in technology or military might, but in their capacity to overcome differences, to learn from each other, and to forge bonds that could withstand the tests of time and space. As the ceremony concluded and the gathered beings looked to the stars, there was a shared understanding. This was not the end of their story, but merely the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers yet unknown. But whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, humans and Zrillions, united in purpose and spirit. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning.